What's up, guys? Welcome back to the home slice. Forgive me for the sound of buzzing bees in the background. I kind of live in bee central, so lots of people raising honey around, so they wander into the house. Just count it as a good omen that the bees of the world are not all dying, and the world shall indeed go on. So today I've got some exciting updates. I'm going to just slightly modify the format of my ANDE Rope tests, and I'm going to share with you about it before we do today's test if you're interested. So I've received a lot of feedback from viewers and various people, and I am going to incorporate some new elements into the test as well as the old ones. And I'm going to start doing a new video format. Now, what it looks like primarily is that I probably will shoot all the tests and cut the in-between, and rather than trying to speak up in the middle of the test to give you feedback, I will just speed up the test footage and then I'll voice over it to tell you what my thoughts were. I think this is going to be a lot more concise, and to be honest, I'm getting a bit bored with my old format. And so I'm hoping this can strike a balance between efficiency and professionalism. What we will lose out on is the fact that you won't see everything continuous, but what I think I'm learning during these edge tests is that people are not that defensive of particular stones, and so not as many people care to see the footage continuous and make sure that absolutely nothing was modified. Hey, if you disagree with that, leave me a comment and let me know. I'm just trying to figure out how to best serve my audience. Anyway, that being the case, at least until we get into testing steels, which people sometimes have more opinion or buy-in about, I'm going to speed up the footage and then provide a more concise and directed voiceover to tell you what I experienced while cutting the edge, and I will put the readings of the best machine on the screen as you see the footage, and it should all be condensed down a bit more conveniently. Changes to the test, so I'm still going to do an initial best score and a slicing aggression test. I got a new scale that's a digital scale that I hope will work, and I'm working on the rig to see if I can dial it in to where I can read tenths of a kilogram in terms of slicing force rather than just like half kilos, which I've been doing so far with a really janky scale. So I'm hoping that's a big improvement. As some of you may have seen already in my video, I bought a cheap Chinese microscope, but it's pretty nice. It shoots HD video up to 1000 times magnification. And so I'm going to be doing a microscope check before the test to make sure that the angle is consistent and that I didn't round the edge over or not make it all the way out to the apex, and that will weed out some of the edges that maybe weren't as trustworthy for giving data. And then I am going to do most of my tests within the first 3 cuts of the rope while I am doing these Victorinox knives. So we'll do 1 rope cut and then a best, and then I'll do a shaving test. Guys were remarking that, hey, this test seems to mainly show the back end sharpness, the working edge, and I'd like to see when it stops shaving. So I'll test after the first, second, and third rope cut to see if the edge is still shaving, and just note that on the screen when it stops. And then I'll do all the slicing aggression tests for the tail end after only 3 cuts. That's because most of the good edges do at least 3 cuts, and it's not really fair to do like 6 like I did with the ceramic dual grit the other day and then test the slicing aggression, because that number doesn't correlate directly to what a fine edge would do after 3, because it's been through so many more fibers of rope. So we're going to stick that static at 3, and then I am going to do a microscope check for wear after the 3 rope cuts. Then I'll do my batoning to check the edge toughness, take the best again to see how much it lost from the toughness test, and then I'll do 1 more microscope check after the batoning to see if there was any visible edge damage after that. After we've done all those tests, I will just literally cut the rope and test with best each time until it's over 400, and that will be the end of the test. The last piece of data will be how many times it cut before it reached 400 best. And that'll be sort of a burnout round, if you will, if you guys do workouts, a burnout round to just see the edge longevity. So mostly the same. I think it will still correlate to my old data, and I'm sorry, I'm always mixing things up, but it's because I'm always like learning stuff and learning that maybe I'm not doing things the most productive way. And I just want to receive feedback and actually provide the data that you guys think is interesting and helps you. So that's my goal. I also will probably shoot a standard intro. So the standard intro will tell you in really brief format what the tests are. This is like the extended cut, I suppose. But it'll tell you in really brief format what the tests are for. And then I'll put a note on the standard intro about how far forward you can skip if you already know what the test is about, and you can go straight into the voiceover and watching the test happen. And hopefully I will just waste less of your time in terms of hearing things that you already knew. That's my goal. Anyway, I've got a bunch of new stones. My goodness, I think I've got, sorry, speaking of wasting your time, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. At the moment, I've got 18 fine, mid-grit, and coarse stones that I've not yet tested on the ANDE Rope because I brought a bunch of stones and stuff back from America. And I'm going to do some strop testing as well. And so we're going to hit pause at the moment. I'm going to hit pause at the moment on testing dual grit combinations. I think that the dual grit combinations have been returning some fantastically interesting data to me, hopefully to you as well. And I'm getting feedback that some of you guys are trying these edges and you're like, this one's phenomenal. So that's really cool. Thank you guys for doing that. Anyway, I've got about 18 stones that I want to test, and I'm going to do the straight tests first, where I do both sides fine, both sides medium grit, both sides coarse, and each of those I will measure them against the previous fine edges, the previous coarse edges, and the previous medium grit edges. And we'll single out which stones seem to be producing the most efficient and good results. Once we've done that, then we'll take the top performers from those sets and start to build new dual grit edges and test dual grit edges individually. And once we've done a fair bit of dual grit edge testing, we will finally get into testing different kinds of steel. Finally. And I'm going to start with the lowest carbon content in stainless and work my way up through the stainless steels. And then we're going to start over with carbon and tool steels and work our way up through those. So I'm looking at probably all of 2023. We're going to be doing stone and steel testing. Hopefully sometime early 2024, we'll wrap that up. And when I do that, I'm going to launch a playlist that optimizes sharpening for each different type of steel. That's what I'm working on right now. It's going to take forever because I just don't do YouTube at the pace of growth. I do YouTube at the pace of having a healthy family. The first edge that we're going to test today is sharpened on a diamond plate and then taken to Vineive resin bonded diamond stones. It went through a FEPA 400 grit and then 800 grit. And then I stepped it up to this new stone I have that has the 800 grit on one side, or the 7.5 you'd call it, I suppose, but it's only at 25% concentration of diamonds. Now this is something that Vineive has done because their stones feel really smooth, but they're actually quite aggressive. And so something that they try to provide to sharpeners for edge finishing is reduced concentrations of diamond, so that they're a bit more gentle to the edge, so that it's easier to deburr. So I've bought one of these stones. I've always had problems with wire edges and rounding on edges with my Vineive stones. Part of it's because I'm not that practiced with Vineive stones yet. I'm not that good at it yet. But what I've done is I've bought what they recommend, 25% concentration stone. So in this test, we're going to test the 7 to 5 micron, which is like FEPA 800 grit, I believe. And in the next test, we will test the other side of that stone. I'll take it up another step on another knife and test the 5 to 3 micron ultra-fine Vineive resin bonded diamond. Forgot to mention 2 important things about how I'm going to clean up the slicing aggression data. Number 1 is that the scale that I got has a minimum threshold of 2 kg, and I put weights on the slicing rig to make it just under 2 kg. So it'll read 0, and then as soon as I apply force to it, it'll read up over 2. I'll be taking the 2 kgs off of that when I write out the actual readings, because they're kind of invisible because it doesn't register until you pass 2, and I've selected a weight that makes the rig just about 2 so that we can get a bit more precise readings off of that. The second thing is that if it takes me more than 1 pass to get through the sisal rope, then that indicates to me that the slicing aggression is a bit lower. So if it takes a couple of passes, 2 or 3 or 4, because it slides through but then it doesn't go through the whole rope, I'm going to actually multiply that number by the amount of passes it took to go through. So if one of them registers at 3 kg, I'm going to measure that at 1 kg of force if it made it through in 1 stroke. If it takes 2 strokes and it measures 3 kg as the maximum pressure, then I'm going to take the 2 kg off the measurement. So that's still just 1, but I'm going to multiply it by 2 because it took 2 passes. And in terms of length of edge, it took twice as much length of edge to accomplish that work. Those are 2 ways I'm going to clean up the slicing aggression data to really make certain ones stand out for having good aggression. All right, Vineive OCB 7.5 micron, 25% concentration, waterstone, hit a number of 160 bests. I have a hard time on these Victorinox knives at times deburring off the Vineive OCB stones. I've got them down to the 100 mark now, presently, but back when I was filming this, it was really difficult. Here's an initial microscope shot, and the lighting is not the greatest, but I'm learning more and more about the microscope all the time. This was the second time I had used it. So our initial aggression reading is reading 3.8 kg. This new scale seems to be a lot more accurate than the other one. A lot of these have shaved for less than 1 pass, and after 1 pass, the Vineive 7.5 stone has got this edge to a place where it is at 390 grams. Quite a large increase off the Vineive stones, which has been characteristic of my testing so far. Now on the second pass, it dropped to 312. I don't know if that's indicative of a wire edge breaking off, or if I didn't quite get exactly the same spot. I always try to butt the little bolster of the knife against the pedestal for consistency and placement. And on pass 3, we are all done. We're already past 400 grams best. Now, looking at the slicing aggression and how that's changed, we started at 3.8, which minus the weight of the rig was 1.8, and we're up to 6.0 kg. Coming back to the microscope on this test, I really noticed some errors. Now, if you look closely, it looks like there's more of a polish toward the shoulder of the blade. And out at the apex, it looks unfinished. And actually, my microscope testing has confirmed this, that the Vineive stones actually tend to throw a little bit of a burr before they're completely reprofiled. And I think the results of this test in particular have to be taken with a grain of salt, simply because I don't think that I had reprofiled this all the way out to the apex, because the characteristics of it are so different from many of the other stones that I have used. I couldn't tell. I thought that I was done when the burr formed, but that was not the case, as you'll see in the next test where I have to correct the same problem. And here we've lost 141 grams from the impact test. Not a very good result, but that is what you would expect if the sharpener had made an error, as I did. If you look closely, you can see a slight indentation in that impact zone. Here's an overall summary. The edge we've just tested is over on the right. You can pause it if you want a closer look, but that's how the Vineive 7.5 micron stone has done in this test. If you'd like to see a serrated edge take on the death rope, you can click on the link on screen now. Otherwise, I'll just say, hey, peace out from the home slice. You guys take care.